The Baker's Gift. There was a small bakery on Maple Street that had been there for as long as anyone could remember. The sign above the door simply said, "Clara's Bread," in faded blue letters. Inside, the air always smelled of yeast and warmth, and flour dust danced in the sunlight that came through the front windows. Clara had owned the bakery for 15 years. She was 38 years old, with strong arms from years of kneading dough and gray streaks in her brown hair that she never bothered to dye. Every morning at 4 o'clock, she would unlock the bakery door, tie her apron around her waist, and begin her work. She made simple things: white bread, wheat bread, dinner rolls, and occasionally something sweet like cinnamon buns. Nothing fancy, nothing complicated. Her customers were regular people from the neighborhood. Mrs. Henderson, who bought a loaf of wheat bread every Tuesday. Mr. Chen, who picked up dinner rolls on Fridays for his family meals. Young mothers with small children who would press their faces against the glass display case. Clara knew most of them by name, knew their usual orders, knew which ones liked their bread sliced thick and which ones preferred it thin. Clara's life was quiet and predictable, which was exactly how she liked it. She had never married, never traveled far from home, never wanted anything more than what she had. The bakery had belonged to her mother before her, and her grandmother before that. The recipes she used were written in a notebook with a worn leather cover, passed down through 3 generations. The handwriting changed from page to page as different women had added their own notes and adjustments over the years. One morning in late September, Clara was making her usual batch of sourdough. She mixed the flour and water and salt, then turned the dough out onto her wooden work table to knead it. The table was old and smooth, worn down by countless hands pushing and folding dough across its surface. As Clara worked, pressing her palms into the soft mass and folding it over itself again and again, she found herself thinking about her sister. Margaret had called the night before with news that she was moving across the country with her husband. They had talked for an hour, and after Clara hung up the phone, she had felt a deep sadness settle in her chest. Margaret was her only close family, and soon she would be thousands of miles away. That sadness was still there in the morning, sitting heavy behind her ribs as she kneaded the sourdough. She worked the dough without thinking, her hands moving in the familiar rhythm they had learned years ago. Push, fold, turn, push, fold, turn. The dough became smooth and elastic under her fingers. She shaped it into loaves, placed them in pans, and set them to rise. Later that morning, Mrs. Henderson came in for her usual Tuesday loaf. But instead of buying the wheat bread she always purchased, she pointed to the sourdough that Clara had just taken from the oven. "That looks beautiful today," Mrs. Henderson said. "I'll try one of those instead." Clara wrapped the warm loaf in paper and took Mrs. Henderson's money. Mrs. Henderson left, and Clara thought nothing more of it. But the next day, Mrs. Henderson came back. This was unusual because Mrs. Henderson only ever came on Tuesdays. "Clara," she said, "I need to tell you something about that sourdough I bought yesterday." Clara looked up from the dough she was mixing. Was something wrong with it? No, nothing wrong," Mrs. Henderson said. She paused, looking for the right words. "It's going to sound strange, but when I ate that bread, I felt so sad. Not sick, you understand? Just this deep sadness that came over me. It had lasted for hours. I thought maybe I was coming down with something, but then it passed, and I felt fine again. It was the strangest thing. Clara frowned. I'm sorry, I don't know what could have caused that. Mrs. Henderson left, and Clara went back to her work. But the conversation stuck with her. That had been the bread she made while thinking about Margaret leaving, the bread she had kneaded while feeling sad. It was probably just a coincidence, Clara told herself. Maybe Mrs. Henderson had received bad news that day. Maybe she had been thinking about something sad while she ate. It had nothing to do with the bread, but the thought wouldn't leave her alone. The next morning, as an experiment, Clara decided to test her strange theory. She prepared a simple white dough, but as she kneaded it, she deliberately thought about happy things. She remembered the summer she was 10 years old, running through the sprinklers in her grandmother's backyard. She thought about the first time she had successfully made a perfect loaf of bread, how proud her mother had been. She thought about her neighbor's new puppy that had bounced around on clumsy paws last week, making her laugh. She let herself feel joy as she worked the dough, pushing all that lightness and happiness into it with her hands. She made 6 small rolls from the dough and baked them until they were golden brown. When Mr. Chen came in that afternoon, Clara offered him one of the rolls for free. A sample of something new I'm trying, she said. Mr. Chen accepted gratefully and ate the roll right there in the shop. Clara watched him carefully. At first, nothing happened, but then Mr. Chen's expression changed. He smiled, broader than Clara had ever seen him smile. He looked around the bakery as if seeing it for the first time, noticing the way the light fell across the floor, the warmth of the space. When he left a few minutes later, he was practically humming. Clara stood very still behind her counter. Her heart was beating fast. It couldn't be real. It had to be coincidence. And yet, she spent the next week testing her discovery in secret. She baked bread while feeling different emotions, then carefully noted who bought which loaves and tried to observe the results. It didn't work every time, she realized. The emotion had to be strong while she was kneading. That was the key moment. Something about the motion of her hands, the physical act of working the dough while feeling something deeply, seemed to transfer the emotion into the bread itself. When people ate it, they would feel echoes of what she had felt. Not overwhelmingly, not in a way that overtook their own thoughts, but as if someone had played a quiet song in the background of their day, a subtle influence that lasted a few hours and then faded. Clara didn't know what to do with this knowledge. She hadn't asked for this ability. She didn't want it, really. It felt like too much responsibility, too much power over other people's feelings. So she decided she would simply be careful. She would try to keep her emotions neutral while she worked. Think about nothing in particular. Make bread that was just bread. For several weeks, this worked fine. Clara went about her business as usual. The autumn progressed, leaves turning gold and red, the air growing crisp. The bakery stayed busy as people began thinking about holiday meals that were still months away. Then one gray morning in November, a woman Clara didn't recognize came into the shop. She was perhaps 50 years old, thin, with dark circles under her eyes. She wore a black coat and black gloves, and she moved slowly, as if her body was very heavy. "Can I help you?" Clara asked. The woman looked at the bread in the display case for a long moment. without speaking. Finally, she said, "I need bread." "Of course. What kind would you like?" "I don't know," the woman said. Her voice was flat, empty. "Something that will help." "Help with what?" Clara asked gently. The woman's eyes met Clara's, and Clara saw such deep pain there that she had to look away. "My husband died 3 weeks ago. I can't eat. I can't sleep. Everything tastes like ashes. But someone told me that your bread is special, that it's the best in town. I thought maybe if I had good bread, I could eat something. I need to eat something." Clara felt her throat tighten. "I'm so sorry for your loss." "Everyone is sorry," the woman said. "But sorry doesn't help. I just need bread. Please." Clara wrapped up a loaf of plain white bread, the most neutral thing she had, and gave it to the woman at half price. The woman paid and left without another word. That night, Clara couldn't stop thinking about her. She imagined the woman in an empty house, sitting at an empty table, trying to force herself to eat bread that tasted like nothing, grieving, alone in the dark. Clara thought about her gift, this strange ability she hadn't asked for. Could she use it to help? Could she make bread that would ease that woman's pain, that would give her a few hours of peace? But what emotion would she knead into it? Happiness seemed wrong, almost cruel. You couldn't cover grief with artificial joy. That would be like painting over a wound without treating it. Contentment, maybe? Calm? A sense that everything would eventually be okay? Clara went to bed without reaching any conclusion, but she couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the woman in black, about the emptiness in her voice. The woman came back 2 days later. "The bread helped a little," she said. "I was able to eat some, but I was wondering." She paused, struggling with something. "I've been thinking about this for 2 days. It's going to sound crazy." "Go on," Clara said. "Someone told me you used to make a special kind of bread. My friend Janet, she said she once bought bread from you that made her feel peaceful all day. She said it was like all her worries just lifted for a little while. She said she'd never had bread that affected her that way before or since." The woman looked directly at Clara. "I know it sounds insane. Bread is just bread. But I'm desperate. If there's any chance you could make something like that for me, something that would give me even an hour of peace, I would pay whatever you asked." Clara's mouth went dry. So people had noticed. Of course they had. She had tried to be careful, but emotions had slipped through anyway, transferred into bread that had affected people in ways they noticed, ways they remembered. "I don't know what your friend meant," Clara said carefully. "I just make regular bread." The woman's face fell. The small spark of hope that had been there died out. "Of course, I'm sorry. I told you it sounded crazy. I'm just not thinking clearly these days." She turned to leave, and Clara felt something crack inside her chest. Here was someone in terrible pain, someone she might be able to help, and she was sending her away because she was afraid. Afraid of what? Of her gift being discovered? Of the responsibility that came with it? "Wait," Clara said. The woman turned back. Clara took a breath. "What if I could make bread that would give you peace? What would you want it to do?" The woman stared at her. "You can do that? Really?" "Maybe. I don't fully understand it myself, but I might be able to help. Tell me what you need." The woman came closer to the counter. Her hands were shaking. "I need to forget," she said. "Just for a little while. When I'm awake, all I can think about is Robert. Every moment I'm remembering something, the way he laughed, the sound of his voice, the last thing he said to me. It's too much. My mind won't stop. I just want a few hours where I don't remember, where the pain stops. Can you do that? Clara felt cold, forgetting. The woman wanted bread that would make her forget her husband, forget her grief. I'm not sure that's a good idea, Clara said slowly. Why not? It's only for a few hours, right? That's all I'm asking for. Just a break from this. Memory and grief are connected, Clara said. I'm not sure I can separate them, and even if I could, forgetting him might not feel the way you think it will. I don't care how it feels, the woman said. Her voice was rising now, desperate. I can't keep living like this. Every second is agony. If you can give me even a moment of relief, please, please help me. Clara wanted to say no. Everything in her said this was wrong. But looking at the woman's face, seeing the rawness of her pain, she wavered. Who was she to decide what this woman needed? If someone was drowning in grief, wasn't it merciful to throw them a rope, even if that rope was only temporary forgetting? Let me think about it, Clara said. Come back tomorrow. The woman left, and Clara spent the rest of the day in turmoil. She barely paid attention to her other customers. Her hands mixed and kneaded on autopilot, while her mind spun in circles. That evening, she took out her grandmother's recipe book and flipped through the pages, even though she knew she wouldn't find answers there. These were recipes for bread, not for moral decisions. The book couldn't tell her what to do. She thought about her own losses over the years, her father when she was young, her mother 5 years ago, a friend who had moved away and never written. The losses weren't the same as a husband of many years, but she knew what grief felt like. She knew the weight of it, and she tried to remember. In the worst of her grief, would she have wanted to forget? Would she have taken that option if someone had offered it? The answer surprised her. No, she realized. She wouldn't have, because even though the memories hurt, they were all she had left. The pain and the love were so tangled together that removing one would have meant losing the other, and that would have been worse than enduring both. But that was her answer. The woman in black might have a different one. People were different. Their grief was different. Maybe for her, forgetting would be a kindness. Clara closed the recipe book. She still didn't know what to do. The next morning, the woman was waiting outside when Clara arrived to open the bakery. She must have been there for a while because her coat was damp with morning dew. I have money, the woman said before Clara could even unlock the door. Whatever you need to charge, I can pay it. This isn't about money, Clara said. She let them both inside and turned on the lights. Sit down, please. The woman sat at the small table by the window where sometimes customers would rest while waiting for special orders. Clara sat across from her. What's your name? Clara asked. Anne. Anne, I need to be honest with you. I do have an ability. I don't understand it completely, but I can knead emotions into bread, and people who eat it will feel those emotions for a while. I could probably make bread that would dull your memories, make you forget for a few hours. But I need you to understand what that might mean. Anne leaned forward. I understand. It's temporary. I'm not asking to forget him permanently. Just a break. Just some rest. But forgetting him, even temporarily, means forgetting everything, not just the pain. You'll forget why you love him too. You'll forget the good along with the bad. And when the effect wears off and it all comes back, it might be even harder to bear. I don't care, Anne said. I need relief, even if it makes things harder later. I can't explain to you how much I'm hurting. It's like being on fire all the time. I would do anything to make it stop, even for an hour. Clara looked at Anne's face and saw that she was serious. She was at the end of her strength, maybe past the end. Okay, Clara said quietly. I'll do it. But I have one condition. You have to come back the next day and tell me how it affected you. If it helps, truly helps, then maybe I'll make more. But if it harms you, if it makes things worse, you have to promise to tell me honestly. Anne nodded quickly. Yes, anything, thank you. Thank you so much. Clara stood up. Wait here. It will take several hours. She went to the back of the bakery, to her work table, and began to prepare the dough. Flour, water, salt, yeast. The same ingredients as always. She mixed them together and let the dough rest while the yeast activated. Then came the hard part. She had to knead the dough while holding a specific emotion. But what emotion would create forgetting? Emptiness? Numbness? She closed her eyes and tried to find a memory of not remembering, which was a strange and difficult thing to do. She thought about the time she had been very ill with flu, feverish and half-conscious, how the world had seemed distant and unreal. She thought about the foggy feeling of being not quite awake, that space between sleeping and waking where you don't know who or where you are. She thought about driving a familiar route and suddenly arriving at your destination without remembering the journey. Your mind somewhere else entirely, while your body moved through the motions. She gathered all these feelings of absence, of distance, of not quite being there, and she began to knead. Her hands pushed into the dough, folded it, turned it. She kept her mind carefully focused on that feeling of emptiness, of disconnection from memory and thought. Push, fold, turn, over and over. The dough became smooth under her hands. It felt wrong. Even as she did it, Clara felt sick. This wasn't like kneading in joy or comfort. This was creating a void. But she had promised Anne, and Anne was waiting in the other room, desperate for relief. Clara shaped the dough into a small round loaf and put it in the oven. While it baked, she washed her hands and tried to shake off the unsettled feeling that clung to her. The bread came out pale and golden. It looked like any other bread. But Clara could feel the difference. This bread had nothing in it, no emotion at all, just emptiness. She brought it out to Anne, who had been sitting motionless at the table for the past 3 hours. Eat this now, Clara said, all of it if you can. The effect should start within a few minutes and last perhaps 4 or 5 hours. Anne took the bread with shaking hands. She tore off a piece and put it in her mouth, then another piece. She ate methodically, steadily, until the entire small loaf was gone. Clara watched her. For a few minutes, nothing changed. Then slowly, Anne's expression shifted. The tight lines of pain around her eyes relaxed. Her shoulders lowered. She looked around the bakery with a vague, puzzled expression. I feel strange, she said. Her voice was different now, lighter. What was I upset about? Clara felt her stomach drop. You were grieving. Was I? Anne touched her face as if surprised to find it there. I don't remember. That's odd. I feel like I should remember something important, but I can't think what it is. She stood up slowly. I should go home, I think. Do I live near here? 2 blocks west, Clara said. She had seen Anne's address when she filled out the check earlier. Will you be all right walking there? Yes, I think so. Anne moved toward the door, then paused. Thank you for the bread. It was very good. I feel much better now. She said it simply, with no understanding of what feeling better meant, what she had lost in order to feel it. Clara watched through the window as Anne walked away down the street. She moved differently now, lighter, but also aimless, like a balloon that had slipped its string. Clara sat down heavily in the chair Anne had vacated. What had she done? The rest of the day passed slowly. Clara helped customers, baked more bread, cleaned the ovens. But her mind was elsewhere. She kept thinking about Anne walking through her house, not remembering why she was sad, not remembering Robert, not remembering anything. What did the house look like to her now? Were there photographs on the walls that she looked at without recognition? A closet full of men's clothes that meant nothing to her? That night, Clara barely slept. She kept imagining Anne lying in bed next to the empty space where her husband should be, not understanding why she felt like something was missing. The next morning, Clara opened the bakery and waited. Anne had promised to come back, but as the hours passed and she didn't appear, Clara began to worry. What if something had happened? What if, in her state of forgetfulness, Anne had gotten lost or hurt? Finally, at noon, the door opened and Anne came in. She looked terrible, worse than before. Her eyes were red and swollen, her face blotchy. She walked straight to Clara and grabbed her arm. What did you do to me? Her voice was hoarse from crying. Clara's heart sank. Tell me what happened. Anne sat down and pressed her hands against her face. I went home yesterday, not remembering anything. For 4 hours, I walked around my house like a stranger. I looked at pictures and didn't know who the man in them was. I found his clothes and wondered why they were there. I felt peaceful, yes, but it was the peace of having nothing, being nothing. And then, all at once, it came back. I remembered Robert. I remembered that he was dead, and it was like losing him all over again, like getting the news for the first time. The shock, the impossibility of it. I spent the whole night sobbing. It was worse than before, so much worse. Clara felt tears on her own cheeks. I'm so sorry. I warned you it might be like this. You warned me, yes, but I didn't listen. I thought any relief would be worth the price. I was wrong. Anne wiped her eyes. But I didn't just come here to blame you. I came to tell you something I realized last night while I was crying. Clara waited. When the memories came back, it hurt terribly. But along with the pain, I remembered why I loved him. I remembered 32 years of marriage. I remembered his kindness, his terrible jokes, the way he sang off-key in the shower. And I realized that those memories are all I have left of him. They're painful because they matter. If I forget them, even for a few hours, I'm losing him again. The grief is the price I pay for having loved him, and it's a price I have to pay. There's no way around it. Clara nodded slowly. This was what she had feared. So the bread didn't help. No, Anne said, it didn't help, but it taught me something. It showed me that I don't actually want to forget. I want to learn to live with remembering. I don't know how to do that yet, but forgetting isn't the answer. She stood up. I'm not angry with you. You tried to give me what I asked for, but don't make that bread for anyone else. It's too dangerous. After Anne left, Clara sat alone in her bakery for a long time. The afternoon sun moved across the floor. Customers came and went, but Clara barely noticed them. She was thinking about what Anne had said, about grief being the price of love, about memory being all we have left of the people we've lost. She thought about her mother, dead 5 years now. Clara still missed her every day. She thought about Margaret, moving across the country. That was a different kind of loss, but it still hurt. And she thought about her gift, this ability to knead emotions into bread. She had seen it as a potential tool to help people, but now she understood how dangerous it was. Emotions weren't simple things that could be added or removed like ingredients in a recipe. They were complicated, connected to everything else a person thought and felt and remembered. Changing them, even temporarily, could cause more harm than good. Over the following weeks, Clara made a decision. She would still use her gift, but carefully, sparingly, and only for small things. A little comfort for someone having a hard day, a bit of courage for a child going to the dentist, small emotions gently given that would fade quickly and harm no one. But she would not try to erase pain. Pain, she had learned, was often there for a reason. It was the mind's way of protecting something important, of marking where love had been. Taking it away might seem kind, but it could destroy something essential in the process. Anne came back to the bakery the following week. She looked better, though still tired, still marked by grief. She bought a loaf of simple wheat bread, and as Clara wrapped it, Anne said, "I'm learning to cook again. I'm eating. It's still hard, but I'm managing." "I'm glad," Clara said. "I wanted to thank you," Anne said. "I know that sounds strange since what you made didn't help in the way I thought I wanted, but it did help in another way. It showed me what I truly needed, which was not to forget." After Anne left, Clara went back to her work table. She had dough to knead for the next day's bread. As she worked, pushing and folding the dough in the rhythm she had known all her life, she thought about all the people who would eat this bread. She didn't try to put any emotion into it. She just let it be what it was: simple, nourishing, honest bread. Sometimes, Clara thought, the most helpful thing you can offer someone is not magic or solutions or ways to avoid their pain. Sometimes the most helpful thing is just bread. Plain, ordinary bread that tastes good and fills the stomach and reminds a person that life continues, that the body needs feeding, that there is still comfort to be found in simple things. Clara would keep her bakery open. She would keep making bread, and when people came to her in pain asking for bread that would fix their problems or erase their grief, she would give them bread that was just bread, because sometimes that was exactly what they needed, even if they didn't know it yet. The autumn turned to winter, and winter to spring. Anne continued to visit the bakery every week, and slowly, gradually, Clara watched her begin to heal. Not because she forgot Robert, but because she learned to carry his memory alongside her life instead of letting it crush her. The grief changed shape over time, became something she could live with, and Clara continued her quiet work, kneading dough each morning as the sun came up, filling the bakery with the warm smell of bread, feeding her neighbors in the most honest way she knew how. The end.